In this unit, we're looking at 4.2, the Industrial Revolution. So last time we talked about the start of the Industrial Revolution, how it was kind of fueled by the transcontinental railroads, how that opening of the national market led to the start of the Industrial Revolution. And it led to that because of them being able to ship goods. The ranchers, farmers, miners out west able to ship natural resources and farming goods and all that stuff east. And then from the east, they were to ship finished goods back to the west. So today we're going to talk about the factors that influence economic growth in the United States and how the United States emerged as an industrial power in the world. We're going to talk about the abundance of natural resources, the government support and protection in the form of railroad subsidies, that means land and money given towards the railroads, and then tariffs and labor policies, and how the expansion of international markets led to the United States becoming a world industrial power. So during and after the Civil War, the U.S. entered a period of rapid economic growth that was due in part to the government policies that contributed to the changes in the factors of production. So the government played a big role in changing how the government looked at the factors of production. The factors of production are land, that means natural resources too, labor, capital, technology, and entrepreneurship. In this actual unit, we're going to look at land, labor, and government involvement. And so that in the next one, we're going to look at capital and entrepreneurship. So the history of industrial growth in the U.S., the role of the government actually promoted economic growth. I know it's kind of a myth that the government was laissez-faire and just left the economy alone. In reality, the government was very involved in the economy, and they created an environment in which entrepreneurs could be successful. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. The expansion west is one way they did that. They opened up through new land and development, and there were new natural resources out west like coal and iron ore, which is going to help fuel the Industrial Revolution. And so that government expansion out west really helped fuel that industrial growth. The National Bank also gave needed capital, that means money for startups, businesses, stuff like that, to businesses, and it helped regulate the lending, which regulated the economy and pushed economic growth. The government also removed the Native Americans from the land who threatened access to natural resources. We talked about that in the last unit, how the government put Native Americans onto reservations. And really tragic, very, very tragic event, but it does aid economic growth for the United States. Previous court decisions also had upheld the sanctity of contracts through that was Dartmouth versus Woodard, and also the government had passed patent laws that protected the rights of the inventor. So a patent is if you create a product and you create this new invention, you would get a patent, which then would protect that product so that no one could like duplicate it and steal your invention. And so the government's always passed really stringent patent laws that protected inventors. The national government also regulated interstate commerce and protected American businesses with a protective tariff. And so the first part was in Gibbons versus Ogden. And the second part we talked about quite a few times with the different tariffs that have been passed. So if you go back and remember, tariffs are put in place to help industries, because if you're paying more for foreign-made goods, then you're more likely to buy American-made goods because they're cheaper. Technology also changed. The steam engine was invented, which helps the railroad and the steamboat and also oil drilling. So as technology improves, the economy changes. And so the government protecting patents helps push technology changes and technology improvement. And you can see that kind of today in today's world as well. During the war, one of the big things that happened was that the Democrats were out of Congress. So the Republicans are able to really make all the decisions they want, really to do what they want in office. The Republicans are generally pro-business in this time period, and they kind of still are today. Republicans helped stimulate the westward expansion. They gave land grants to railroads and free land to settlers to move west. That helped stimulate the economy. They also reorganized banking to provide a more secure financial climate. We talked about that with the National Bank. And then the war contracts helped stimulate the economy. That was through all the goods that they needed to fight the war. Because the army needed goods to fight the war, they need to pay people to make those goods. And so when they pay people to make those goods, then now those people have money, and those people can go spend their money, and that helps stimulate the economy through a cyclical effect. The government also protected settlers in the West from Native Americans, like we said before. They raised tariffs to help American businesses. The government took the side of business in their fight against labor unions. They also favored an open immigration to give businesses a large supply of workers. They were okay with a lot of immigrants coming into the United States because those immigrants would then be cheap labor for the businesses. So they didn't have to pay these immigrants as much as they would maybe someone who was already an American. They do end up restricting Chinese immigration through the Chinese Exclusion Act after the railroads were completed. So they used the Chinese workers to help build the railroads as cheap labor. And then once the railroads were built, they said they didn't want any more Chinese people coming over to the U.S. They also supported big businesses over workers. If the labor unions ever went on strike, the government almost always sent troops to break up the strikes and to put the strikers in jail. The prices were also kept artificially high through tariffs. So the consumers, it sounds like they keep the tariffs high and that's going to really help consumers, but in reality what it does is it keeps prices high, and so the average everyday consumer has a hard time actually buying a lot of those products. So it doesn't actually help consumers that much. It does help the business owners though. They're able to make a lot of money off of that. Some of the effects of industrial growth: there was a surplus of goods. That means there's extra goods because of this rapid economic growth. And so you should know from supply and demand, I know we haven't talked about this much in class, but we will. Because of supply and demand, if there's a surplus of goods, that means that prices are going to go down. In order to avoid that, that's going to cause the U.S. to look for markets overseas, which is then going to lead to imperialism, which we're going to talk about in the first unit of the second semester. So that kind of summarizes what we've discussed, or summarizes the unit. We're going to talk more in detail in class. What you really need to know is that the government was involved in the economy. It wasn't laissez-faire like a lot of people believe, where it's just kind of the government was hands off and didn't interact with the economy, didn't put any restrictions on the economy. In reality, what the government does is it protects the business owners, and it helps the business owners get wealthy off of the backs of their workers and the backs of the consumers. And so the government really intervenes to help business owners as opposed to workers and consumers. Thank you very much for watching. Please go to Canvas to turn in the notes guide and to take the video quiz. And also, please write your name in your notes guide in ink, even though there's no E in please. Thank you very much for watching. Bye.